My name is Rachel, and when my life took a drastic and unexpected turn, I was 42 years old. Following 15 years of union my spouse, I had always believed that our life together was coming to an end, but I never thought it would end so quickly. On a Tuesday afternoon, David handed me divorce papers as if he were delivering me a grocery list. There was no warning, no conversation, just a cold printed proclamation that our time together was gone. The days following the divorce were a fog, and I remained in our suburban home by myself, surrounded by memories and solitude. He said that he wanted to find himself, but it turned out that he had discovered a younger lady named Tiffany who worked at his workplace. I went from cooking for two to hardly using a fork because the space felt too large and empty. My days consisted of going to work, acting like everything was fine, and coming home to the eerie silence of an empty house. Then, one day, I received a phone call that completely altered my life. One evening, David's 22-year-old son from his first marriage called me. He was looking for a job after graduating from college, and David had essentially washed his hands of him because he was too busy with his new relationship to provide any assistance. In a timid, almost ashamed tone, Ka requested if he might stay with me for a few weeks while he recovered. He moved the next weekend with just a duffel bag and a backpack, and I told him without hesitation, "Of course you can." He was taller than I remembered, lean, and had a certain boyish charm that seemed to be evaporating as adulthood forced him to mature sooner than he had anticipated. When we first started eating dinner together, it was just leftovers or takeout. Later, Ka started cooking and showing off recipes he learned in college. He made a mean lasagna, and I couldn't stop making fun of him for using so much garlic. We watched movies, played cards, and chatted. At first, everything was quiet. He kept to himself, stayed in the guest room, and hardly left except to get food or ask if I needed anything. He spoke candidly with me about his job interviews, his worries, and his disappointments. I also shared with him the agony of the divorce. The betrayal and the loneliness. We shared more than just food, we also shared pain. A drink of wine and pizza one evening. You were always more of a parent to me than my own dad, Kay replied, glancing at me. I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. My throat constricted, so I simply nodded and grinned while swallowing the lump that had developed. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was being seen. The discomfort between us vanished after that, and we settled into a groove. He began taking small actions. Taking out the trash without asking, repairing the kitchen's leaking faucet, and bringing home flowers because I had begun to anticipate his presence. It provided solace. However, everything changed that night. I felt a shock, not fear or discomfort, but something else, when our hands brushed as we both reached for the same dish after dinner while we were cleaning up and laughing over something funny that had happened at his interview that day. Something cozy. He held my gaze for a little too long. Sorry, he muttered softly. It's okay, I answered, speaking softer than I had meant to. We danced around each other over the next few days, and there was an unmistakable tension in the air, not an unpleasant one. One evening, I watched one of our favorite shows while nestled in a blanket on the couch. Kyle entered and took a seat beside me, which was closer than normal. His arm touched mine, and I remained there. He turned to face me. Rachel. Can I ask you something? I asked, my pulse pounding. Do you find it strange that I feel more connected to you than I have ever felt to anyone before? No, I believe that we have both experienced a great deal. Perhaps we simply have a deeper understanding of one another than other individuals. He nodded slowly while keeping his gaze fixed on mine. More than that, I genuinely care about you. I realize you probably didn't anticipate this when I moved in, but I just wanted to let you know that I was taken aback. Not because I hadn't experienced it myself, but rather because he spoke it aloud. It brought it to life. Though I hoped I didn't know what was right, my heart was a battleground of uncertainty, but I did know one thing. When no one else was around, Cal had been there for me. Instead of responding with words, I simply grabbed for his hand. We talked about everything, how complicated things were, how the world would see us, and what it meant for our futures. After that night, our bond grew stronger. We were careful not to rush anything and to avoid crossing borders from which we couldn't return. But we were truthful throughout it all. We no longer shared a roof once Kay eventually found work in the city and moved into his own flat, but our relationship remained strong. If anything, it got stronger. He continued to visit on the weekends, and we continued to share our lives, laugh at ridiculous performances, and have dinner together. A year later, we are still together in a discreet, respectful, and shameless manner. I'm not sure what the future will bring. We might encounter criticism or difficulties, but I am aware of this. My narrative didn't end with my divorce, rather, it was a fresh start.